Hey guys, welcome to the closing final bonus session for today until tomorrow morning. This is going to be a fantastic presentation sponsored by our friends at Platypod, and in fact featuring the inventor of the Platypod, Dr. Larry Tiefenbrun. Dr. T is going to be on with us and share just amazing images from great photographers like I've been talking about today that are part of what we're calling the Trifocal Challenge. So to explain a little bit more about what to expect, I'd like to invite the man himself on with me. So it's Larry and Larry tonight. Dr. Tiefenbrun, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Larry. So great to be back at another KelbyOne conference. And Larry, you know, we've been talking about this one for 2 months now. And we're both very stoked and excited about it because I think everyone here is gonna learn a little bit, but hopefully be stimulated a lot to change some things in their photography and to look at things a little bit differently. We've got a lot to unpack here. So first of all, I want to welcome everybody to the Platypod section of the KelbyOne on One Landscape Conference with a presentation that we are calling the Trifocal Challenge or the Trifocal Landscape Challenge. And we'll get into this a little bit more in a few minutes. Larry, you wanted to mention something else about the end of the presentation.
Yeah, actually I have two things. As we start wrapping up, you're going to be able to get all your questions answered. So as Dr. T and I go through these images, and you see these great images from these wonderful photographers, as you have questions about them or questions about the Platypod gear that was used to capture the images, definitely put those in the chat. Now this time we're asking you, put questions in the regular chat because that's what we're going to be watching, and I will convey those questions to Dr. T as we start wrapping up so that you can get the answers that you want. Plus, I know you're going to love this. Those of us that are into photography, we love our photography gear, and Platypod photography gear has a number of specials, like there's a Father's Day special going on right now. There are a number of specials that are going to be available. There's going to be all kinds of ways that we explain how you can save on Platypod gear, so be sure to stick around to the end so that you get that information.
All right, Larry, so without any further ado, we're going to dive right in. We've got a lot of slides to show, a lot of beautiful images to show, and a lot of concepts to present. So before I get to the actual Trifocal Challenge, let's just go over a few things that we've discussed in the past and I'd like to emphasize again for tonight about composition and how to go out and shoot. So we'll start with this lovely set of images from Victoria Pavlov White. And I'll just quote Victoria in her comments. She said, "I took these pictures at one of my favorite places, Hilton Head. My absolute favorite time of the day is sunrise. Each sunrise is different, but every single one brings hope and positive emotions. I've been taking pictures of sunrises for a very long time, but Platypod gave me the angle I was looking for. A low angle right across the horizon line. My camera was almost touching the water, capturing the entire sky with incredible clouds above it." So you see her set up, one image on a tripod at eye height, another image taken from real way low down on her Platypod Max. This unit, the Max, is no longer available, but it's to show you that if you have old Platypod gear, it never goes obsolete. It is still quite useful. So here is the eye-level image, pre-dawn, beautiful image, leading lines in the clouds and in the shoreline. And then Victoria goes low down and catches the sunrise. And why so low down? Because like this, she gets a beautiful reflection off the water. Now, she's got the ocean working for her here, but you could do the same thing with a bottle of water poured out and making a puddle. And we've showed those images in the past. Sorry, excuse me. I'm not going to rehash on that. But also going low down, you can go under some things and pick up other elements too in your images, giving them framing, beauty, and emotion, such as in this image here from Victoria. Then we move over to echo this concept from our friend Rick Salmon. Now, Rick shows you some basic equipment that he's used without a fancy camera, with his iPhone, using a Platypod Extreme and the new Platypod phone grip, which will hold pretty much any smartphone. And setting this low down, he's got a wide-angle attachment that he put onto this. So here's the camera setup under these ferns, and then Rick shows us what he calls the boring view. This is the regular snapshot view. You come to this area of ferns, you take a picture, pretty dull, pretty uninteresting. But then take that camera, go back, put that underneath the ferns, and this is what you get. Beautiful, and just, evokes responses of, wow, is this a rainforest? What's going on here? These ferns look enormous. They're leaping up into the sky, and just a beautiful composition. Also, remember some things about landscape photography. I'm going to throw in here cityscape photography, because cityscape is a type of landscape photography also. Bob and Dawn Davis. Bob Davis set his camera out, and you can see he's got a camera mounted up here on a railing, and a second camera mounted on a railing, wide angle, telephoto, just to show us what you can do when you have your camera mounted. And I think some of the other speakers today have spoken about this. If you want to get a long exposure shot, make sure your camera is mounted solidly. And a Platypod is as solid as any surface that you put it on. And again, to show you this image, again, the setup that he's got here, and bringing in this wide-angle view, leading lines coming in, the movement in the trains, the beautiful gradations in the sky. This is what we think of mostly as landscape. But don't forget about going telephoto in your landscape photographer. And here's, just to give you a nice idea of landscape photography in telephoto, here's Bob's setup, looking out at a lighthouse. And this is outside of Chicago. And here's what happens when you go really telephoto. And this is at 254 millimeters. And you can see the amazing landscape image that you're now taking of telephoto, looking for details in that landscape. One point to bring out over here is, think about when you're shooting, don't just shoot horizontal like this. Shoot vertical also. Now, of course, if you're trying to publish in a magazine and you want a 2-page spread, well, you're going to need a landscape horizontal image like this. But if you want a single-page image, or maybe you want to make the cover of the magazine, you're going to need a vertical. However, horizontal and vertical also evoke certain feelings, certain emotion. Horizontal evokes calm, peacefulness, relaxation, whereas vertical compositions lead to more energy, tension, and drama, as is quite evident in this pair of pictures. Now, remember, a cityscape is a landscape, and here's what you can do with telephoto in your landscape images. Again, vertical composition, horizontal composition, two totally different images, all from the same spot. And here Bob's comment was, during the spring and fall equinox, the sun rises and sets with remarkable precision, perfectly aligning with the east and west views of Chicago. The sun shines through the canyon of buildings, much like how the sun shines through Stonehenge. Just a lovely image. So let's come back now and get into the topic for tonight, which I wanted to present. So what is the trifocal challenge? Well, we sent out, actually, Larry, you sent out emails and contacted many of our Platypod pros and said, hey, Larry T has come up with this crazy idea. We want you to take 3 images from exactly the same spot. You can use a Platypod or whatever you need to hold your camera steady. 3 images from the same spot in wide or ultra wide angle, in a normal view, so with normal lenses, or with a telephoto. And just to give you, I mean, most of you will know this, but just to give you an idea of the 3 lens groups that I would recommend for this. So for the wide angle, you have, this is a 14 to 24, but I would say anything up to about 28 millimeters qualifies as wide angle lens. Normal, anything from about 35 millimeters to about 60 millimeters, like that lens, I would classify as normal. And telephoto, anywhere from 70 millimeters and up. And we have, I think, one image was done at about 400 millimeters in here to bring out those details in the landscape. And if you don't want to, you don't have to buy 3 separate lenses. I have one lens on this camera, really nice one for the old type Nikon mount, 28 to 300 millimeters, and this gives you the entire range of what you need. But even easier, of course, the best phone is the one you have with you. And now especially, this is a iPhone 13, but now the iPhone 15 has the equivalent of a 24 millimeter, I believe about a 52 millimeter, and about 112 millimeter equivalent. And for your long exposures, you can mount it on a tripod. Platypod provides the Platypod grip, which will go on any Platypod or any tripod and allow you to hold your phone nice and stable. If you want to learn more about this equipment, we've got a lot of information out there that you can learn. Larry, you and I promised each other we weren't going to spend a whole lot of time on hardware tonight. Since that information is available elsewhere, we've got so much to talk about. So let's dive right in to the Trifocal Challenge. And here we have 3 images that just demonstrate wide angle, normal view, telephoto. Okay? Now let's move on to some really amazing shots. And here we go. Levi Sim comes to this beautiful scene in Snow Canyon State Park in St. George, Utah, and using a panoramic type of view, which he shot several images with a telephoto lens and merged them together in Photoshop. But then he goes wide angle lens, which brings in some of this brush in the front here, so foreground elements. The mountains pushed way back in the background, and that's what wide angle does, is it gives you separation and depth to your images. And then back over to the sky. Here's the normal view, again bringing in some foreground in the brush here, but now more emphasis on this medium ground with the open field and the mountains, and we start to get more of what's known as compression. Compression means what looks like it's an optical illusion of shorter depth between the objects brought in by a longer lens view. That's the normal view. And then he goes telephoto to really bring in the majesty of the mountain, all shot from one spot. Here he's got his Platypod on a tripod this time with a long lens. And I think he used a 2x adapter on this lens to get even a longer throw. For the next image, I want to talk about this, and I have a little feeling of guilt. Ellis Venner, who is a technical editor over at Professional Photographer magazine from PPA, a dear friend and a Platypod pro, Ellis sent me a grouping of a few pictures that he took the Trifocal Challenge with. And I said, okay, it's a nice picture with some trees in it. And I wrote back to Ellis, I said, okay, what's your teaching point? And when he explained this to me, wow, my eyes opened and I realized what he was doing. And I think this is fascinating. So yes, if you've all got the impression, oh, it's a bunch of trees, listen on, and I think you'll learn a little bit more. So we're going to start with the telephoto view here. And this was done with a single 24 to 70 millimeter zoom. So that gives you wide angle in the 24. And then you can go to 50, 60 millimeters for normal, and then to 70 millimeters for the zoom. Here, Ellis is simply looking a grouping of 3 trees. And with the telephoto lens, they all look pretty close together, maybe 15 or 20 feet apart. And very nice. Let's look at the next image. Now he pulls back. So what spoke to Ellis about this image? And I missed it the first time I looked, and I think you'll see now what Ellis saw and what I saw. And that is, look at these 2 trees echoed in the sky by 2 clouds. A tree, cloud. Tree, rocks, clouds, all echoing this. And that's what spoke to him, is the patterns that he started to see in this image. And then he goes full wide angle, and all of a sudden it looks like the ground is almost a mirror image of what's going on in the sky with similar patterns, the triangles that you're seeing giving interesting composition. An arrow shape of the horizon and these trees pointing you and leading the eye across the image. Now, so much, let me pull out here a second. So much of what you do in your photography is really what you're shooting for yourself and not necessarily for others. When you come to a scene, look at that scene and first say, okay, what speaks to me about this scene? And only then, I think, will you be able to project out to others. Some photography is done for sales, and yes, you're going to have to impress the public. But so much is for our own therapy, and later we'll mention a book that Rick Salmon wrote about phototherapy and motivation. And you have to look at it like that and see what speaks to you in the scene. Now, Larry, if you want to comment on this image here.
Yeah, in fact, as you mentioned, I was collecting these images from these artists, and they were just so striking. And what I appreciate so much is they all shared stories behind their images. And Shamira Young mentioned a few things about her upcoming images that I found pretty helpful. She said, for the Trifocal Lens Challenge, I set up at the Blue Water River Walk along the St. Clair River in Port Huron, Michigan. It's a popular spot in the city to take a peaceful walk on a path and spot some freighters. She said, from my vantage point, I chose to carefully set my Platypod Max on a log sitting near the edge of the water. The low perspective provided an interesting view of the movement and texture of the log itself. And then, when I switched to my zoom lens, the thoughtful seagull and distant Canadian freighter were quite interesting. For my 3 focal lengths, I chose to use 18 millimeters, 35 millimeters, and 135. So the 18 millimeter shot is
it's that one.
Is this one, yeah. And then at 35, she's got a little bit more zoom going on, and you're starting to see the freighters in the background, but they're just a background accent piece. But then with the full zoom, the freighter is the subject, and the seagulls then also become the subject. And one of the things that I want to point out is we're talking about these millimeters like they're hard and fast, and you'll see with the next photographer, Matt Seuss, Matt actually points out something that if you're new to photography, if you're getting into lenses and hardware, and you're trying to understand all of this, you will soon discover that a 50 millimeter lens is not always a 50 millimeter lens. It is only a 50 millimeter lens when it's mounted on what's called a full frame camera. So in other words, a camera that has an image sensor that's the size of a traditional piece of film negative. And that's what's going on with the crop factor of lenses. And so fortunately for us, it is very well described by Matt Seuss. So as we jump in and see what Matt has going on, first of all, take a look at his behind the scenes images. You can see that he's got these gorgeous sunrise setups at Mesa Arch Canyonlands National Park. And so what Matt tells us is, he says, I shoot the OM system from Olympus, and it's a micro 4/3. That refers to the sensor size. So if you look at the EXIF data, the detailed data that's captured by the camera and embedded in the images, he said, what you do is you just double the millimeter size for the full frame equivalent. So in other words, 50 millimeters doesn't equal 50 millimeters on this particular cropped sensor, micro 4/3 sensor camera. And so for our convenience, Matt did mention both on each of the images that he shot. So look at these images so you get an idea of how he was set up. And you see off to the right, you see he's got his, and you can see it on the image on the left, he's got his camera mounted on a platyball that's mounted on a platypod that's got the spike feet going straight down and holding tightly on those boulders, on those rocks. And he said, you know, after the whole thing was over, I feel kind of bad. I really should have taken a picture of the photographer who was working right next to me because he was struggling the whole time. His setup was, he brought this very nice, expensive camera, but he just had a beanbag. He didn't know about platypods. So he had a beanbag to kind of hopefully stabilize his camera on it. And the beanbag kept shifting, and he just didn't get what he wanted out of it. And our friend Matt Seuss did, because he had a very stable mount. So let's have a look at Matt's images. He shot the wide angle image at 7 millimeters, which is the 14 millimeter equivalent. And then he shot the medium arch shot at 28 millimeters, which is the 56 millimeter equivalent. So you're starting to see where he's going. Wide angle, then a medium shot, and then you can also see he did tight shot.
Larry, can I pause for 1 second?
Yeah.
I want to bring out something interesting here. Here, I guess the starburst of the sun is your focal point in the picture, and everything kind of enhances that.
Yeah.
To me, the left hand, so that was the wide angle. The left hand normal angle image, to me, the subject here is this rock under here, which looks to me like it's glowing on fire.
Yeah.
And so just two different images from exactly the same spot, bringing out totally different ideas and concepts. And you were asking for the next image. Here we go.
Yeah, and this is his tight shot at 92 millimeters. It's the equivalent of 184 millimeters if you were working with a full frame camera. And it really, those three images alone really illustrate the challenge that Dr. T had with these professional photographers. Go stand somewhere, point your camera in multiple directions at different zoom amounts, and see if you get three different, and they do because they're professional photographers, three totally different types of images, three different sets of emotions, three different results. And each one of them is worth printing out and putting on your wall. Matt also went to Bryce Canyon late afternoon, and he used as his equipment the Platypod Elite and a Platypod handle as a little bit of a riser for him. And the images that he shot will start off with a 7 millimeter, so the wide image, it's the equivalent of a 14 millimeter. And just a gorgeous image by itself. And one of the things that's interesting about this is he was using the Platypod Elite, which has a built-in level. And that really matters because when you're in this environment, you cannot tell visually what is really horizontal because of the way that the landscape actually proceeds away from you. It has a bit of an angle to it. And you can see Dr. T will point out this ball head has a built-in level. And so you can quickly, very easily, while you're working out in the field, you can get perfect level. And you don't have to worry about, you know, looking at your camera. If the camera's a little bit away from you, that ball head tells you the whole story. Now the next image is his medium shot. And this medium shot is actually a vertical shot. And again, you really need that ball head to be able to tell, is your camera perfectly horizontal? Because the landscape won't give it away. The landscape has leading lines that move away from you, and you don't know what horizontal really is until you use a piece of equipment to tell you. So this is a 24 millimeter image with the equivalent being 48 millimeters, so about a 50 millimeter image. And then we'll wrap up with the telephoto. This looks like a cathedral. It's incredible. This Bryce Canyon shot in the late afternoon is the equivalent of 172 millimeters and just a beautiful, beautiful image. And this is not a man-made building or structure.
And I think what speaks to Matt in these images, and it's a common thread, which I mentioned before, he brings out fire in the rocks. These look like they're just glowing. It's amazing to me.
It's beautiful. It makes you want to go there. And that is a great landscape photo when it makes you want to go somewhere. Next up is a friend of mine, Moose Peterson. He is a great photographer. I've learned so much from him over the years in multiple ways. And this was yet another teaching experience. And what you're going to see is just another perfect example of the trifocal challenge. Moose is at a place that is called the Flats on Kodiak Island. It's at the head of Mush Bay. And these were all captured in that area. The photographs were taken with a Nikon Z8 with a lens called the Z24-70 f2.8. Moose tells us he spent a lot of years observing and photographing Kodiak brown bears around here. So, the wide-angle view, this first image, just absorb this for a second. This gorgeous black and white image has the horizon line essentially toward the middle. It's a little bit below center. The sky is very interesting, lots of texture and things going on. You kind of see, but you're not really necessarily drawn to the mountains in the distance. And the foreground plays a big role in this composition. So you see the art of that foreground, and this is something that I think a lot of people miss when they start, and I sure did. When I started with landscape photography, I'm standing, holding my camera and pointing it at something, and yeah, I'm standing on the ground, but I'm not looking at the ground, I'm looking off in the distance. And you don't get those kinds of gorgeous images. So that low image that brings in so much of the foreground, well, Moose got that because it was mounted on a Platypod. Now this next image is just a little bit more distant. This is the normal lens image, and it kind of takes everything into consideration. You see that the horizon line is in the bottom third, so we've got it broken up into rule of thirds composition. And then again, not perfectly centered, just to the right of center is that mountain, very interesting. And we still have those textured clouds in the sky, and that's very interesting. Again, a very different image. We're not very focused on the foreground. It's still visible, but we're not really focused on the foreground. We're really kind of focused on the middle ground, and that's what that normal lens does. And then in this next final shot, the telephoto, it's all about that mountain. Just a beautiful, beautiful image. The foreground is almost entirely gone. We see a little bit of the distant shore of the lake, and we do see, you know, just crushed black on the foliage before you get to the mountain, and all the texture, all the light, all the information is essentially below the sky, and above the foreground it is that mountain, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Moose did a great job of the trifocal challenge. Speaking of doing a great job with the trifocal challenge, our next contributor is Kathy Weatherston, and she did a great job in Ireland, and I am going to do a bad job because I do not have an Irish accent, which I do appreciate, but I did look up the pronunciation of the places where she went, so I'm going to put this in Kathy's own words. She said, "One evening, I headed to the west of Ireland, to a place called Mullaghmore. I thought it was the perfect location for the trifocal challenge. I used my Platypod Extreme, my handle, and the Elite ball head." She said the lenses that I used were the Canon 15-35, a 24-105, and then a Sigma lens that was 150-600 millimeters. And so in this one place, you're going to be blown away. All these different images, all from one place with these multiple lenses. She said it was soon enough to sunset and the wind was picking up, but I had the spikes of the Platypod secured in place, so the wind was not a problem. For location number 1, I stayed in the same spot and I photographed Mullaghmore Castle using the 15-35 millimeter lens with the coast in the foreground. Then changed to the Sigma 105-600 and photographed Classiebawn Castle close up. Then I rotated my lens on the ball head to capture the sun setting. So let's have a look at these images. This is location 1. She said I stayed in the same spot and photographed Mullaghmore Castle using the 15-35, and then she changed to the 105-600 and that's the castle close up.
Sorry, Larry. This is the first image wide that you mentioned, and then here's the
close up of the castle.
The close up of the castle, and then she turns around and takes the sea view.
Yep, and she rotated the ball head around to capture the sun setting. And
all from the same spot. Amazing.
Yeah, it's 3 different experiences, all from the same camera in the same place. Now, she did go to a slightly different location, not terribly different. This different location is in this video. Kathy's using a timer function so that she avoids the vibration of just pressing that shutter button. So you avoid finger vibration by using that timer. Although the trifocal challenge pushes us to different perspectives from the same vantage point, it often pays to shift vantage points, as you can see here. Similar shots to the first location, but from this area she was able to get the Ben Bulben mountain behind Classiebaum Castle. She said, I was on a stone wall and did not use the handle this time. So that's the image that you're seeing. Now at location 2, she's got these side by side for comparison. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous image, but it's hard to believe that it's side by side and it's the same place. She's from the same place, but it's so dramatically different as far as the images go.
And Larry, if I can point out here, not only is it the same place, but she is shooting from the same direction. The only thing she changed was she moved from lower ground here, where the mountains are not visible, but you see sky, shooting from a low perspective up. And then she moves back and goes to higher ground, bringing in the mountains. And the proof in the pudding is here that it's the same direction. Is look at the view of the castle. You got these 2 little peaks in front, 2 little peaks in front. It's the same direction, yet a different elevation and a totally different image. So it's the trifocal challenge times 2, because she did it from 2 different locations but of the same subject. I thought that was just brilliant.
It is brilliant. It looks like she installed mountains, and no, she did not install mountains with AI. It's just the trifocal challenge. And next up we have location number 2, shifting from telephoto to a normal lens angle.
And again, in each one, she shifted from the castle to a sea view, but now this is a totally different sea view than she had in the first image.
Yeah, and the next image is yet another view that takes into account the sea. And you can still see the castle, but it is much, much smaller. It's a mini castle.
And wide angle. Now it's the entire scene and the openness and the depth of everything that she's bringing in.
Next up, we have some images from my friend Paulo Casio. Did a great job for us. And Paulo is a professional with movie credits galore. I'm sure you've seen some of the movies that he has been the cinematographer on. He is also a very accomplished professional still photographer, and he teaches both cinematography and still photography. He's based in California, and this backyard is in California. So I'm going to read you what Paulo sent me about the images that he shot. He said, landscape and real estate are among my favorite things to shoot, and this was a lot of fun, just shooting our newly completed backyard. So this is his backyard. As a cinematographer, I took the liberty with a more cinematic 2-to-1 crop. Then we shoot movies and episodic television. This is exactly how we do it. We shoot a master or establishing shot, typically on maybe a 17 to 24 millimeter. Then we move on for coverage with dialogue of the action around a 35 to 50 millimeter. And then they use the close-up around 75 to 150 millimeters for story and emotional impact. Paulo says, I had plenty of room to move around, except for the wide shot, which you can see I was pretty backed up against the corner of my house.
And we're going to get into now what I would want to, and I'm sure you've heard this again from some of the other speakers, I'm going to get into a little bit about visual storytelling. And this is what Paolo has kind of set the scene for us in that when you're doing visual storytelling, you've got to get a good establishing shot, then move in, focus in on your subjects, and going these different angles, even from the same spot, will help you to achieve the story that you want to tell. So I'm going to get into a series of my own images shot recently on a trip to visit our children in Israel. And this was done from my son's porch at 5 o'clock in the morning because I was suffering from a lot of jet lag and I wanted to get out there before sunrise. And I put together this little series that I called Daybreak, just to show you a community waking up, getting ready to go to work, and just with a few images trying to get that story out. So here I have my camera with my 28 to 300 millimeter telephoto strapped onto the balcony railing with a Platypod Extreme and using one of our Platypod straps from our multi-accessory kit. And the Platyball, which I used to level, because as you'll see in some of these scenes, the mountain range in the back really eliminates any chance of proper leveling, because you can't tell where the proper horizon is. And since I wanted to be panning left and right, simply using the level in the camera wouldn't necessarily help with that. So I used the level in the Platyball. So initial shot, my establishing shot, pre-dawn, kind of cold colors, a little bit of pink in the sky from the view. And then I zoom in. This is at 112 millimeters, zooming in towards the crossroads approaching the town. There's a blur of a bus coming in to bring people to work and some movement on that bus. And then construction workers heading out on their motorbikes to go to building sites. This is a town still under development. And then the sun comes up over the mountains and we get that flash of daybreak coming up in the buildings with my 28 millimeter view out here and everything going to a golden warm set of tones. Now, this will be shown even better in the next series, but I wanted to take a crack at it myself for the challenge. This is from, Larry, you want to just mention this set of images?
Sure, Dr. T. Jeff Wiswell did a great job on the Trifocal challenge. He went from wide angle of the entire scene into a normal view of the facade and the statues and the super telephoto of the single figure on the roof. These are very, very different images, all from the same spot, all from the same camera, and actually all the same subject, yet it's still very, very different images and very different feelings that you get from this.
And please remember, the point we're trying to bring out to everyone is when you go out to shoot, don't just go and take one shot and walk away. Stand there, study it, look through your camera, look through your lens, go wide, go medium, normal, and then go telephoto and start to pick out details. And you're going to discover as you do this exercise that there were things you just didn't see when you started out. So back into the slides here. This was from my friend Dave Williams, who takes the same approach to present another story that he saw. He wanted to do a story here on mountain climbers. So the mountain in the background is called Fløya. Dave lives out in Norway, so you'll pardon me for if any mispronunciations here. And he's got his Platypod set on a rock, as you can see here on the right, with a Platyball Ergo here. This is a panoramic view. Actually, here's a cheat. He did this one with his iPhone, but he wanted to set the scene of the beautiful islands below, and his house is somewhere back here. Now, if you look up over here, you're going to see a mountain that they call the Goat. And here is his establishment shot done in wide angle. And you'll see the entire scene over here, of course, the bay and everything, and some foreground elements. And then Dave starts to hone in on the mountain spires up over here. And as you get even closer, you pick up the mountain climbers. And Dave told me afterwards, he spoke to his friends, and it was one of his friends who was up on that mountain at the time. So again, tell the story, look at your images in different ways. Moving on to the next slide. Again, my friend Rick Salmon asked me to help pitch his book called Phototherapy. I've read this entire book myself. There's no photos in it, but it's full of motivation and wisdom, just like the cover says, and it gives you many ideas of how to approach your photography to get better images. And Rick is kind of bringing this home with using his iPhone on a Platypod grip, on a Platypod Extreme, strapped onto this fence at the Croton Dam. And Rick has shot this dam hundreds and hundreds of times, but I don't think ever exactly like this. He said he sees something different when he goes out there every single time. So here we are in wide angle, long exposure. That's why the camera needed to be properly mounted, so you could do a long exposure, and while you're getting movement in the water, here, and here, everything else is coming out nice and sharp, and also in the clouds, some nice movement there. And then he goes to a normal view. Now on the iPhone, again, a 3x lens is equal to about 52 millimeters, and gets the flowing water here, and the contrast of this pretty little green tree. And then he goes into a telephoto view here of the distant waters flowing down. And when I saw this image the first time, I thought this was a grayscale image, very nice graphic black and white image. And then I looked really close, and the brush over here is bright green. And this is a color image, but the rock was so black with the contrast in the white waters that this really comes across almost like a grayscale image. So I thought that was really, really interesting the way Rick presented it. And this is to show you, hey, the Trifocal Challenge doesn't only apply to landscape photography, but as Nikon ambassador and our friend and Platypod Pro Joey Terrell shows, the same approach can be taken to macro photography or other types of close-up photography. Wide angle, then get in close to a normal view, and then get in even closer, even up to a macro view. And it's a great idea for you to take this approach and apply it, I think, to all your areas of photography. And we're going to close up with some fascinating images from Platypod Pro Rain Hayes. And if you haven't already caught it, Larry just did an interview with Rain Hayes a few weeks ago, which has practically gone viral on YouTube, about ultraviolet photography, ultraviolet flower photography. And if you'll go to the Platypod channel by going to YouTube and just searching Platypod channel, you'll find that interview. But Larry, please go ahead and tell us a little bit about this next set of images.
I will, and I would be incorrect if I didn't also mention Rain has a whole UV class, UV photography class at KelbyOne. Very, very popular class. Rain is a very accomplished photographer, and she sees things in ways that we don't all see them. And as Rain sent me these images, she also wrote up some of the backstory. And I've been to the Golden Gate Bridge, and I didn't realize these bunkers were there. I don't know how I missed them. But Rain said that my favorite approach is to tuck into one of the World War II bunkers where I have a 270-degree view that includes San Francisco and Angel Island. Once the ball head is level, I can pan and zoom to capture a variety of scenes in infrared, which is, she says, my favorite medium. So let's have a look at the 28 millimeter infrared image. We all have seen countless pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge, but how many of us have seen this? This is a real picture. This is not just invented AI artwork. It's a beautiful, different take on the Golden Gate Bridge. She did take a picture at 61 millimeters of sunny.
Larry, before you get to that, I just want to make a comment over here. I was fooled by this picture. The first time I saw it, I'm looking at this area down here, and it looked to me like green water with white splashes splashing over the bridge. And I said, wait a second, unless there was a tidal wave there, there's no way that could happen. And then I realized that this is infrared, and this is how some of the plants will come out in infrared, just going cold and giving a white image over here. So I thought this was an interesting illusion when I saw it first, and just took on a whole new meaning when I realized it was infrared. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but we'll go on to the next image.
Yeah, it does. It looks different, and that's an image. This one is Sunnyside Island. It's a 61 millimeter infrared, again from the same place, one of those bunkers. And next up we have actually seeing the city, but through the bridge. All three images that she shot, this is 135 millimeters, that's what this is. All three images are totally different, taken from the same spot in a wide angle, a normal view, and a telephoto, and all with infrared. And
I love how that's framed in there with the bridge.
I know, it's just beautiful. I would never think to do that. And that's why she's so much better than I am. Just a great photographer. Now, Rain sent in a mistake image, and there's a story behind this. This bonus earthquake image, she says, I must have bumped my tripod or hit the shutter button accidentally during one of the bridge shots. The result looks like an earthquake in progress, and that's an appropriate theme for this area. A bit tongue-in-cheek, we could call this technique unintentional camera movement. In any case, it was a happy accident and my most unique photo of the day, and also in infrared. So this is the infrared earthquake. She did a great job with that stuff.
Absolutely. So, I'm sorry, again, I want to just thank everybody for joining us at the Trifocal Challenge, but don't go away yet, because some interesting things are yet to come. One thing I want to suggest to everyone, take this challenge yourself. Make it a personal project. When you go out and shoot 3 images, 3 different images from the same spot. And if you get something that you really like, especially if you're using Platypod equipment doing it, send us a behind-the-scenes shot of your setup, the camera, perhaps the image or scene you're taking in the viewfinder or the monitor of the camera, and send it to us at Platypod. You can send it easily to an email service at platypod.com. And if the images are really good, we'll post it out for you. Who knows? We might even end up doing an interview with you, a blog post, or even putting out there in our newsletter. So if you get something that you're really proud of, send it on, and we'll let you know if we can use that. So I invite everybody to do that. Larry, I'm going to ask you to comment a little bit about some of our sale programs so people can save money on Platypod equipment.
Oh, of course, I'm happy to do this. There are a number of ways you can save as you're picking up different pieces of Platypod gear. And by the way, just want to circle back really quick. Make sure that you're asking whatever questions you might have for Dr. T about any of the gear. We've already got a couple questions coming in, but feel free to ask those questions and we will address those shortly. All right, so back to the discounts. This one is a really cool one. It's instant loyalty rebates. And the way it works is you actually build your own bundle. And so what you can do is, let's say you go, well, I want the Platypod Extreme. And as you get to the website, you go, oh, there's a couple other things here that I want. I want to grab a handle as well. So what you do is you start off by putting whatever you're going to purchase into the cart, into the shopping cart at the Platypod website, and then just keep adding other things until you get to the total bundle, your homemade bundle that you want. It's not a prepackaged, yes, there are prepackaged bundles, but this is build your own bundle. So once you build your own bundle, If your total is over $350 or $450 or $600, there's a special code for each of those price points that you can take $50, $75, or $100 off by using the code that's right there at the Build Your Own bundle. And you'll see this when you get to the Platypod website. You'll see this banner there. Sure, you can take a screenshot of it now, but you can see that at the Platypod website as well.
And not only that, but they'll also get free shipping. Larry, you want to talk about some of our other educational programs, and then I want to take some questions.
Yeah, I do love the YouTube channel, and as Dr. T already mentioned, go to YouTube and don't just search for Platypod, because you'll get tons of videos if you search for Platypod. Like I go there and Moose Peterson's got videos, and Scott Kelby has videos on Platypod stuff. I have videos on Platypod stuff. But what you want to do is go to the Platypod channel. So you get the very specifically intended, intentional training videos. And so go search on YouTube, not just for Platypod, but Platypod channel. Go there, subscribe, and click the little notification bell. And every week you're going to get an educational video from Platypod. I do interviews with great...
What day of the week is that, Larry?
It comes out on Sunday, every single week. And you'll see different types of training from different types of expert photographers, and you'll get behind the scenes. You'll learn about all kinds of things, from toy photography to, in fact, Rain Hayes did the ultraviolet with me recently. Lots of great learning. I've learned a lot on hoax photography, right? Faking supernatural events.
That was from Riley Arthur, sure.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. All on the Platypod YouTube channel, but go to Platypod channel at YouTube and sign up there. We got a couple questions coming in, so let's zip through this. There is also a Platypod email newsletter. You can sign up for that. Go to the platypod.com website. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter. You'll find out about discounts and other things, sales that Platypod has going on, but you'll get more and more training content. You'll get these email newsletters that have wonderful images in them, and then you'll get a link to see how each of the artists created these things. Yet another
new product releases also, Larry. In fact, I'll tell everyone, we've got 2 accessories coming out in the next 6 weeks, so if you want to hear about them first, sign up for our email list and our newsletters, and you'll be able to get that. I'm sorry, Larry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. Platypod Users Official, this is actually a Facebook member group. So go sign up for Platypod Users Official. You do need to ask permission to come in, and all you have to do is just slip me a check for $90 or more. No, I'm kidding. It's free. It's free. You go over there and ask permission to join, and you'll be hanging out with other Platypod users. And we've actually found people posting images there that turn around and become featured on like the blog or something like that, because we're discovering you guys as being great photographers because you're members of the Platypod Users Official over on Facebook. So wonderful place to participate. And of course there are Platypod Pros, a growing list of professional photographers and people that are very inspiring and users of Platypod. And wonderful group of people to hang out with, and you can see work from each of these wonderful folks over at the Platypod website.
And I want to thank everyone for joining us today on this presentation for the KelbyOne on One Landscape Conference, all about the Trifocal Challenge. And Larry, we got about 3 to 5 minutes before they kick us out of here. So let's go for some questions.
Happy to pass along the first question from Taryn. Taryn is looking for info about Platypod for iPhone.
Okay, so as we mentioned before briefly, but I can show you a little bit better right now, this is called, and let me zoom in on it, this is called the Platypod Grip, okay? And it comes shipped in 2 pieces. So you have here a stem. This is actually a micro tripod in and of itself, and I think we've shown on some of our presentations how you can mount up to a 5-pound camera on this. It has an Arca base mount, which also has a 3/4 inch socket and two 1/4 inch sockets. So you can simply take a Platypod, any Platypod, let's try this one for example, and just mount it right on here, or any tripod for that matter. And you can then go ahead and put the clamp on here that comes with it. We call this the jaws. And what's really cool about this is for video work or lighting work, it has two cold shoes on the side so that you can attach lights, microphones, other devices onto it. Very convenient, and this one knob controls everything. All metal, heavy-duty construction, and as I said, supports up to 5 pounds, although not too many people have a 5-pound phone. So I think you'll. I hope, Sharon, I hope that answered your question. If you have more questions about that, head over to platypod.com. Look up the Platypod grip. You'll find a teaching video from Larry Becker all about it and lots of information on that. So hope we answered your question.
Also, there's a bundle. The Influencer Smart Start Kit is a cool thing to look into.
Yes.
It includes a couple of pieces of equipment. In addition to the grip, you get a riser that you can put at any one of a number of heights. And there are actually videos over on the Platypod channel that explain how the different pieces are used and why you might want to add some things to the setup. So it's really a great tool for iPhone photographers. Dr. T, we have another question. This one is from Sherry in Knoxville, Tennessee. Sherry says, I shoot wildlife and I need a ball head that's easy to move with the animals. Macro and landscape is also part of what Sherry does. Can you recommend the best bundle?
Well, Sherry, right now we let you build your own bundle. So for that purpose, I would recommend going with a Platypod Extreme and getting a handle, because then what you can do, and this is very cool, we've shown this on some of our past presentations, you can then take, now this is for occasional use. If you're going to do this heavy duty for wildlife, I would recommend you purchase something called a gimbal. But if you take your Platyball and you loosen up the controls, and then you mount a camera with a telephoto lens on it, okay, I don't have the camera on here right now, now you can swing this around and use it as a gimbal and follow wildlife. It's a really cool tool to use. I say for occasional use because I don't know if I want to stress this out long term. If you're going to do a lot of it, purchase a gimbal. But for occasional use, this satisfies the use of a gimbal. It's really, really cool. And it's one of the things that you can do with a Platyball that you cannot do with conventional ball heads. If you want to learn more about Platyball, please go to our website. We have a ton of information about it and about how to use the Platyball properly, and the electronic leveling indicator that's on the Platyball Elite. And if you don't need that, we've got the Platyball Ergo. Same thing, same use without it. And there's much more information on here, just not enough time right now to go through all of it. But Sharon, thank you very much for your question.
Dr. T, thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. That wraps up our questions and our training session. But that doesn't mean that Dr. T is going to stop answering questions. He and I and the rest of the team here, we all watch what's going on in the chat. And so over the next day or so, if you come up with new questions about Platypod stuff, you can ask in the chat, or you can always reach out to Platypod at customer service over at Platypod. So it's service@platypod.com. Ask any questions that you have about anything we taught this evening, anything that you saw, any gear that you have questions about. Dr. T, thank you so much for your time this evening and for getting all those great photographs together from those wonderful artists for us.
And thank you and bravo to all our photographers who were great sports about submitting their photos for the Trifocal Challenge. And I hope you out there will do the same too. Thank you, Larry. And thank you, Scott Kelby, for bringing us these wonderful presentations, to my lovely wife, Minna, for supporting me. And Larry, you ought to thank your wife, too, for allowing you out of the house for so long to chair all of these conferences. Thank you. We love you all. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. T. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening's bonus session, folks. And we look forward to seeing you here again tomorrow, because we're going to do the whole training thing starting all over again at 11 o'clock tomorrow, because we had the keynote today at 10. Tomorrow, class sessions start at 11. We've got another collection of Track A, Track B, breakout sessions, and then that wrap up. And by the way, if you have a landscape image that you would like to submit for that contest, that wraps up tonight. So make sure that you submit your landscape photos tonight before midnight Eastern time to be eligible for the big win tomorrow afternoon. That's it for tonight. I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Have a good night's sleep, and we'll see you in class tomorrow.